Coming up on Lawmakers, immigration legislation passes out of committee. The Senate votes to make it harder for minors to drop out of high school. And underage killers could soon face more prison time under a bill approved by the Senate. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Nwandi Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, students and parents rally at the Capitol, urging legislators to pass the Time for Schools Act.
And our Tuesday leadership interview series continues with Senate Majority Leader Tommy Williams. But our lead story tonight, immigration legislation passes out of committee. Senator Chip Rogers' immigration reform bill took a first step toward becoming law today. Senate Bill 529 passed out of the Senate Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee today by a vote of 6-2. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman joins us now live from the Capitol with more. Jesse.
Well, in Nwandi, SB 529 would limit public services such as Medicaid and food stamps to Georgians with proof of legal residence. It would also require law enforcement to check the residency status of anyone they book. The bill had 2 hearings in the Public Safety Committee prior to today's meeting. After weeks of discussion, rallies, and public hearings, Senate Bill 529 passed out of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee today. The committee heard no debate, but did hear from Senator Sam Zamarripa, who is chairman of the Georgia Association of Latino Elected Officials and the sponsor of SB 529, Senator Chip Rogers. Rogers says he is satisfied with the language of the committee substitute.
I think the bill is in great shape. It is comprehensive. There is no bill like this in any other state. So while it's not everything that everyone would want it to be, it's a lot more than anyone ever thought it would be at this point.
Senator Zamarripa is pleased with some of the changes in the bill.
When this bill started off, it was primarily directed at the undocumented individual and was designed to create a host of requirements for those individuals when they applied for services, even bringing passports, visas, all kinds of identification in order to qualify for services.
But Senator Zamarripa says he still has some concerns.
So I still will not be supporting this bill, but I think I've been responsible in working with Senator Rogers, who's done a very good job of trying to understand how a state takes a federal issue on.
Now, the committee substitute to SB 529 was amended to crack down on human trafficking and those that would sell documents they claim would establish legal residence. Senator Rogers says he does intend to try and get this bill engrossed when it goes to the floor of the Senate. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
And in other news, the state Senate today passed a bill making it harder to drop out of school. Here's Senate Education Chairman Dan Moody.
While our graduation rate is improving, we still need to address school dropouts without any delay. Many people are surprised to learn that a child can leave school on their own when they turn 16. I don't think that a 16-year-old is ready to make that decision on their own. I think it's time we take a fresh look at this practice. The legislation before you is a first step to keep kids in school. It simply requires anyone who's 16 or 17 to get their parents' permission before they walk away from school.
Senator Nancy Schaefer wanted to amend the legislation to require local school boards to give parents the opportunity to withhold permission for their children to join clubs and take part in designated activities.
This amendment that you have on your desk right now recommends a policy. It's an opt-in policy recommending that once again places parents in charge of their children. It is in the best interest of families and children for the following reasons. It promotes parents as the ultimate educators of their children. It emphasizes parental involvement and the necessary ingredient to the educational success of their child. It allows parents to help their children manage their time and their commitment at an age when both families and children are often extended.
The Schaefer amendment, similar to a House bill, passed. So did Senate Bill 413, the compulsory school attendance law. The vote was 42-9, and the bill goes to the House.
Well, the House today voted to extend the annual back-to-school sales tax holiday to include energy-efficient appliances. Bill sponsor Representative Lynn Smith explains House Bill 1219.
This bill provides for a sales tax holiday from Thursday, August 3rd, 2006 through Sunday, August 6th, 2006. on school supplies up to $20 per item, clothing and footwear with a sales price of $100 or less per item, personal computers and equipment with a sales price of $1,500 or less, and purchases of energy-efficient products with a sales price of $1,500 or less per product for non-commercial or personal use. Energy-efficient products, also known by the Energy Star label, are defined as any dishwasher, clothes washer, air conditioner, ceiling fan, fluorescent light bulb, dehumidifier, programmable thermostat, door, window, or refrigerator, which have met or exceeded the EPA and the Department of Energy's energy-efficient requirements.
The measure is expected to generate over $11 million in state revenue and over $8 million for local jurisdictions. House Bill 1219 passed without opposition. It moves to the Senate.
Georgians could be voting this fall on a constitutional amendment that would limit property tax increases to 3% each year. That measure has passed a House committee and could come before the full House later this week. Representative Ed Lindsay, a Fulton County Republican, is the sponsor of the legislation. He said it would change a fundamentally unfair system that currently taxes homeowners on the potential worth of their homes. Constitutional amendments require a two-thirds majority to pass. And the state Senate today passed a bill that expands a judge's maximum sentencing option when it comes to dealing with juveniles under 13 years old who commit murder. Senate Bill 522, known as Amy's Law, was drafted last year in response to a 12-year-old being suspected for the murder of an 8-year-old girl named Amy Yates. David Zelski joins us live from the Capitol with the details. David.
Well, Gerald, current law allows a judge to sentence a child under 13 who steals a car to a longer sentence than one who commits murder. The max a judge can sentence for murder is currently 2 years. This bill could extend that to the juvenile's 21st birthday. Senator Bill Hamrick sponsors Amy's Law. Amy Yates was 8 years old. Her accused killer was 12. Even though recent investigations point to the possibility of the murderer being someone older, Senator Hamrick, backed by a unanimous vote in the Senate, believe a change in the law is still needed.
Georgia law really does not give a juvenile court judge much discretion when you have a murder at that age. And so we've worked over a couple of years to try to give juvenile judges some more authority when that happens, if it ever happens again. It doesn't happen that often, but just in case it does, we want the judge to have the authority to commit a child who's 12 or younger to the system for longer than 2 years, and we put up until age 21. There's still the discretion to send them to treatment and do a lot of other things. Either the department can do that or the judge can do that. But we feel like this just gives the judge that ability, and we've worked with all groups that that have presented us concerns, and I think we've eliminated all the opposition that I know about.
Now, Senator Hamrick is also part of a study commission formed last year to create a new juvenile code for the state. The legislature voted earlier this session to extend this study commission one more year. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
The House today voted to streamline the background check process for public safety job applicants. According to supporters of House Bill 513, it will save time and money for the GBI and local law enforcement agencies.
Simply allows for the driver histories to be submitted to the GBI so that when they pull the background checks on the employees, they can also get the driving record at the same time. They can already get the driving record, they just have to do it through a separate request to the Department of Driver Services, and this would simply let them make one request and get all of the information.
House Bill 513 passed 161-0 and moves to the Senate. The House also decided to align state parking permits for disabled persons to national standards. Representative Jack Murphy explains the need for House Bill 1217.
This decal is not recognized in other states, so essentially what this bill does is take the decal off of the back windshields, and the only decals that are recognized now for disabilities are the placards that you see that hangs from the mirrors or on the dashboards, or the disability license plate that is actually issued for permanent disabilities.
House Bill 1217 also extends the renewal period from 2 to 4 years for the disability decals, and it creates a color-coded system to distinguish between permanent and temporary disabilities. The measure passed without dissent and moves to the Senate. Finally, today the House decided to reconsider its failure to pass a measure that would prevent courts from dismissing civil cases on the basis of incorrectly filed paperwork. House Bill 1195 now returns to the House Rules Committee.
Deadbeat parents beware. The state Senate passed a bill today requiring you pay back child support out of any Georgia lottery winnings. Here's Senator Seth Harp.
That this bill is the recognition that we do have folks that play the lottery and don't pay child support. And what this bill does is requires the Child Support Commission to capture any winnings greater than $2,500. I am told there is an excellent cooperation between the Child Support Agency and the lottery folks. Both sides, both of these organizations have signed off on this legislation and appreciate it. In short order, I'm asking that you support this bill, and what it will do is the lottery, if someone has a winning greater than $2,500, the child support people will capture that amount and make sure that the children of Georgia are supported out of the lottery winnings.
Senate Bill 419, the Lottery Proceeds Child Support Payment Bill, passed 48-0 and heads for the House. Meanwhile, House and Senate conferees are working on the supplemental budget. One unresolved issue is money to help those cut from the Katie Beckett waiver program, which benefits Georgia children with developmental disabilities. Today, I asked Senate Majority Leader Tommy Williams if that agreement on the money was holding up the budget agreement.
It's not really a point of contention. It's just how much money and how many people do we need to try to help that we were helping in previous times.
I think the figure that the Senate tentatively put back in was about $13 million. Do you think we're looking at a figure that high, or might there be some compromise on that issue?
Actually, it's not quite that high, just basing it on the folks that were taken off the programs because of federal law changes. But we think we can do it for less than $10 million even.
Okay, let's move on to the issue of immigration. That bill in committee today, likely to be on the Senate floor soon. Your take on what might happen there?
Well, we worked very hard and long on this bill and talking with all those that are affected by it, and we think we've got a pretty solid bill to pass out and hope to pass that out by the end of the week.
There seems to be a very wide range of opinion on that bill, from those who say, including the sponsor, that it is the strongest state legislation on immigration in the country, and those who are saying that it's simply going to work a hardship on some people who are here illegally. Your opinion?
Well, at some point the legislature has to do something about illegal immigration, and we're doing as much as we can do under the federal laws, which federal laws require us to meet the demands of illegals, children particularly, as it relates to health care and going to public school. But we don't intend to fund medical services for those adults that are here illegally, especially when our welfare rolls and our peach care and those programs are overtaxed right now. So we're going to do all we can to pass a very strong measure, and I think we have that in the Senate now and hope to get it out by the end of the week.
We are past the midway point in this session. What's your assessment of the session so far?
You know, I think it's been a very productive session. The governor has addressed his education issues, the 65% rule, which requires that 65% of all the money we spend on the education goes to the classroom. We think and know, in fact, that this does increase test scores and SAT scores. Other legislation we hope to get out that's tax credits for those who put their land in conservation, and a couple other education bills that we think are real strong bills, as well as a number of other good bills. We've had very little controversy thus far in the legislative session.
Senator, we are out of time. Our guest has been Senator Tommy Williams, Majority Leader in the Georgia State Senate. Thanks for joining us on Lawmakers.
Thank you very much.
Senate Minority Leader Robert Brown was not available for an interview today, but we will continue our leadership series with Senator Brown tomorrow.
And coming up tomorrow, the state Senate is expected to debate a lending bill that would give more protections to consumers who pawn their car titles for quick cash. Senator Bill Hamrick says the legislation includes a provision requiring that car owners get a notice before their vehicle is repossessed.
If they repossess it, then it requires another notice to be sent that tells the consumer they have a right to get the car back before it's sold, which is another concern that the consumer groups had, was that once the car went away, they had no chance of getting it back. So this gives them a right to get it back within a certain time frame. It also requires the sale to be done in a commercially reasonable manner, and that the excess be returned to the consumer.
The bill would also require those making car title loans to register with the State Department of Consumer Affairs.
Also expected on the Senate floor this week, Senator Greg Goggins' self-defense bill. That measure is designed to give more legal protection to citizens defending themselves from attack. Senator Goggins said it would cover situations outside the home, auto, or workplace.
For instance, if someone is jogging, walking, riding a bike in a parking area, areas where one may be prone to a physical attack, we want to make sure they're covered. Also, Georgia law is silent on its code is silent on the term duty to retreat, and we want to be able to put that in code.
Senator Goggins' bill would also protect those who defend themselves from being sued by their attackers. The bill is expected on the Senate floor on Thursday.
Students, parents, and legislators rallied outside the Capitol today for the Time for Schools Act, which would allow parents time off from work to attend events at their children's schools. Lawmakers Katie Eubanks has more on the bill.
Parental involvement is necessary for academic success, according to Representative Roger Bruce, and this belief has prompted him to sponsor the Time for Schools Act.
A group of 10-year-old children recognized the need to have their parents come to their schools and participate in their education. So they asked for a bill to be passed that would allow their parents to be able to take 8 hours a year, that's all, just 8 hours, to be able to come to a school and participate in their class without their job being put at risk.
In addition to Representative Bruce, students themselves also commented on the impact of having their parents available to participate in their school activities. Trey Meadows, a 5th grader, discussed the importance of the bill to him.
I am here today to ask my lawmakers to support the Time for Schools Act. As a student, I know this bill is very important. It would enable our parents to share in our educational experiences.
Qasim Ghulam Ali, an 8th grader at Path Academy, also spoke.
I never saw my parents at school to talk to my teacher about my grade or behavior. I feel lonely and I feel like I don't belong here. It's very important for my parents to know what I'm doing in school.
The Time for Schools Act was actually introduced first in 2004 and passed through the House but died in the Senate. Representative Bruce reintroduced the bill this session as HB 230. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Katie Eubanks.
The Senate Education and Youth Committee held a hearing today on mental health screenings for students. Senator Nancy Schaefer introduced the legislation, which, if passed, would make substantial changes in the way in which school counselors deal with abnormal classroom behavior.
The Ninth Circuit decision proclaiming that parents' rights over the education of their children terminate at the threshold of the school door opened the door for the school's power to extend to protecting the mental health of children without parental consent. Mental health monitoring of children and adults is not just a Tom Cruise issue. It is the drugging of children and adults that demands the attention of every American.
I have no problem putting counselors out of business. Now, I'll tell you right now, I have no problem with that. But here's the thing. In my son's school, he had a friend who accidentally killed his mom. It was a car accident, middle of the night. They dragged my son out of school and his friends into grief counseling prior to asking me what my opinion of this was. They had no right to touch my son and discuss psychiatric kind of treatment, mental health, anything, without asking me how my son's doing. I handle
school counselors like myself, our main function, my main function working in the alternative school, what I do all day long is individual and group counseling. So that's my entire job, and that's why I'm so concerned about this bill, because basically the way this bill is written right now, it would make my entire job illegal.
The committee lacked a quorum to take a vote. Senate Bill 430 remains in the Senate Education and Youth Committee.
House Bill 1190 received a due pass from the Senate Transportation Committee today. The bill is aimed at creating harsher penalties for repeat toll violators on Georgia 400. That bill, sponsored by Representative Joe Wilkinson, was presented to the committee by Senator Judson Hill.
This legislation was requested by the State Tollway Authority because they have problems collecting unpaid tolls and fees. And at the end of last year, the last fiscal year, over $900,000 in fees remained outstanding and unpaid tolls. Some drivers had literally hundreds of violations. You've seen recent media reports about those. House Bill 1190 provides a more effective way for the authority to collect outstanding fees, and it focuses only on multiple violators. You may have not paid 2 or 3. We're not going after those people. We're waiting until they at least have several hundreds of dollars of fines. And at that point, it goes into the administrative system, classifies the current court fine to a civil monetary penalty, up to $70 per violation payable to the authority. The vehicle registration for that car will be automatically suspended by law.
House Bill 1190 passed by substitute despite 2 dissenting votes and moves to the Senate Rules Committee.
Acting on a report from the American Bar Association, legislators and human rights activists held a press conference at the state capitol today calling for a moratorium on the death penalty.
Such a pause is not being soft on crime, but is rather taking with deep seriousness our sacred responsibility as citizens to ensure that no innocent person is ever put to death at the hands of our state.
Since 1996, of the people on death row whose cases moved forward, we have executed 19. In that same time period, 22 people who were serving time under a sentence of capital punishment have gone into post-conviction relief, what we call habeas corpus proceedings, and either their sentence or their conviction or both have been overturned.
There have been over 120 people in this country to have been exonerated from death row. I stand before you as number 77. At the age of 16, I was placed on death row and spent the next 4.5 years of my life wondering whether or not I would be executed for something I didn't do. So I asked the legislator to look at my face, look at the 120 other men and women's faces, and ask themselves, is this justice?
Supporters of the moratorium hope that Senate Bill 600 and Senate Resolution 1030 pass in order to temporarily halt executions and create a commission to study Georgia's death penalty. Both pieces of legislation await committee assignment in the Senate.
Christopher S. Brasher was sworn into the Atlanta Circuit of the Superior Court today. Governor Sonny Perdue began by explaining why he believes Brasher is fit for the job.
We think it's Georgia's gain. We think it's the bench's gain when someone like this who has continued to aspire to being a judge is afforded that opportunity, and we're excited, Chris, about the difference that you'll make in hearing the cases, and we know that you'll do a great job. And perform all the duties. Incumbent on me. As judge of the Superior Court of the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. So help me God. Congratulations.
I hope to do exactly what the oath said, to administer justice fairly to everyone who comes before me. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
Brasher has 15 years experience as an attorney, 10 of those as an attorney in the Attorney General's office.
Senate Insurance Committee Chairman Ralph Hudgens canceled a hearing on Senate Bill 476 today. The bill would provide insurance coverage for families who make too much money to qualify for Peach Care. Chairman Hudgens said he canceled the hearing because the bill didn't tell how much the program would cost, and he didn't want a hearing on an insurance plan that could cost the state millions of dollars. That didn't sit too well with the bill's sponsor, Senator Steen Miles.
Is that it is rules du jour, rules by the day. We make up the rules in this legislature during this majority as we go, and willy-nilly as we so desire. Reasonable people would at least give a fair hearing to a measure that impacts so many of our hardworking Georgians.
In other news, the House today agreed to name the House Post Office for longtime staffer Wiley T. Nixon. Before the vote, House members paid tribute to a man who had been a fixture at the Capitol for almost 4 decades.
cases, many of us don't know the person that is referenced in the resolution. We trust our colleagues' discernment in the whether or not this person deserved the recognition that we name a road, a bridge, an intersection, or a building in their honor. In that sense, this resolution is a lot like those resolutions, but in a greater sense, this is a very unique resolution. In that in this case, the life of Wiley Nixon touched every person in this chamber. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, this resolution has 180 co-sponsors. Every member of this House signed this resolution, and that pays a lasting tribute to the legacy and the memory of our dear friend. After several weeks into our legislative session last year, Wiley suffered a stroke. It took him away from us, and he was in the hospital. But his dedication to serving us was still there. Because as I thought about it, as I visited Wiley in the hospital, and then as we attended his funeral later, it dawned on me that Wiley didn't adjourn until we did. It was only a few days after our adjournment.
Today's tribute concluded with a lighthearted memory of a man who served state government for 39 years.
And you know, Wiley was hard of hearing, wore 2 hearing aids and still had trouble hearing. But he was very proud the day he came in and Peter got on the elevator with him. He got on the elevator with Peter Banks and said, Mr. Banks, I got a new hearing aid this morning. And Peter said, what kind is it, Wiley? And he said, 830. Those of you who were lucky enough to know Wiley are truly fortunate and blessed. And without further ado, I think it'd be very appropriate if we all stood for a moment of silent prayer in Wiley's honor, and ask you to bow your heads with me. Father, we ask you to bless the memory of Wiley T. Nixon, a public servant, a friend, a loyal employee of this house. We ask that you look after him. We know he's with you now. In his name, we ask you to bless his family and his survivors. Amen.
And, of course, we will certainly miss Mr. Nixon as well. Coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the Senate is expected to debate legislation that aims to protect consumers that pawn their car titles for quick cash. We'll have that story and all the latest from under the Gold Dome tomorrow night at 7. If you missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Wild Chronicles. That's coming up next here on GPB.
And that is our broadcast for this, the 24th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.